You're building up businesses, you're buying property. When did you realize that you had a personal brand?
Probably when Facebook started to get usable for entrepreneurs. So I don't know if anyone's old enough, but back in the day when we started a Facebook account, it was to check out what our ex-girlfriends from school and our old friends are doing. Then it evolved and you got Facebook groups and communities, and Facebook grew into this thing where you could essentially market yourself and people could find you and your business and your brand outside of a Google search.
Welcome back to the Kelly Lundberg Podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Lundberg, and I'm joined today by someone who really embodies innovation and disruption. That guest is Rob Moore. He's joining me here in the Dubai studio to talk all things personal branding and scaling your business. Rob is known as the Disruptive Entrepreneur. He is a highly successful entrepreneur, best-selling author, incredible public speaker, and host of not one, but two chart-topping podcasts, the Disruptive Entrepreneur and the Money Podcast. His career spans over investment, property, personal development, financial education, and he's really built a global following by challenging the norm and inspiring others to think bigger, act bolder, and achieve more. And you're going to hear that in this episode today. We dive into his journey. We talk about personal branding. We talk about public speaking, scaling a business, mistakes that entrepreneurs make. I think we should get into this episode. Here we go. Welcome to the show, Rob. It's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me in Dubai.
I know, it's so cool. What brought you to Dubai, by the way?
So I'm running a speaker training course for my top trainers.
Yeah.
We do that once a year, although this is the first time since lockdown because it was difficult to get out of the UK for a couple of years. Yeah. And then I'm just at the back end of a podcast tour. So I had 4 interviews booked for my show, Disruptors. One of them had to postpone. And then I'm probably going on about 7 shows. Obviously, this is the biggest and the most important.
Absolutely. Friday night recording.
So I saved this, exactly.
For your cucumber water.
As soon as I drank that water, not only is it not sparkling, but there's something in there.
Something good. Good. Your podcast, I think, was one of the first few podcasts I downloaded 9 years ago.
Yeah.
How long have you been podcasting?
Yeah, this is just past 9-year anniversary.
Amazing.
Yeah.
But that was through Andy Harrington, which I think you know. I think in the community in the UK, sort of people in the personal development world, they all kind of know each other.
Yeah.
Is that safe to say?
Yeah, I've known Andy for 17 years. And I launched my show. It's now called Disruptors. But when you started listening to it, it was called Disruptive Entrepreneur.
Yes, that was right. Yeah. So why don't you tell everyone a little bit of a backstory as to who you are?
No one wants to hear me brag about my life.
What got you down to this path? I guess what you're doing now in terms of the speakers, like how you didn't just wake up and go, one day I'm going to be a speaker. You give us a bit of because you talk so much about, the disruption, the innovation, the entrepreneurship, but how did you get into being an entrepreneur?
Okay. I will answer that. What would you say is your typical listener?
My typical listener would be usually people who are starting a business, who are in business, they want to learn about personal branding.
Why do people follow you? What do they mostly follow you for?
Personal branding, I would say. That would be my background.
Okay, cool. All right then. So December the 15th, 2005, I was working in my dad's pub. I was 26 years and 11 months old. And I was 50 grand in debt, still living with my dad. 20 years ago, you move out when you're 18 or 21. And if you live with your mum and dad after age 21, you've messed your life up. It's different now, I'm sure.
Interesting, that analogy, because I'd left at 18.
Well, there you go. Yeah. So you'd left because I know people now live with their parents when they're 30 and 35, just because of house prices are crazy and other reasons. Yeah. But back then, you'd messed your life up if you were still at home, but older than 21. And I'm nearly 27. So rewind back to when I was 8 years old, because my dad's owned pubs, bars, clubs, hotels his whole life. Yeah. And I've grown up in them. And probably age 8, Dad got me starting to work. He used to have me going and changing all the beer barrels. I loved it. Reshelving all the bottles after a really empty shift. He'd even give me a stool behind the bar, not in front of the bar, so I could kneel on it so I could pull the pints for the customers. I mean, that's probably illegal now.
Yeah,
but,
I don't think you'd get away with that now.
If any pubs are left. But I loved it. And then, but you have to go to school. And I hated school. Hated school. A lot of shame around school as well. Hated it. Then I went to a good sixth form college because apparently if you're smart, that's what you do. And then I went to university because apparently if you're smart, that's what you do. Even though I didn't know what I wanted to do and I hated both of those.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm quite anti-university for many people, not all. And then I didn't know what to do with my life, had a degree, couldn't do anything with it because it wasn't what I enjoyed. And then on December the 15th, 2005, I'm nearly 27. I'm 50 grand in debt. I'm living with my mum and dad. I'm broke. I'm getting into more debt. I'm probably 2 weeks away from having to go personally bust. My dad had this nervous breakdown in his pub in front of all of his customers. My dad didn't really have any friends after age 40. The only people he really knew were his regulars in his pub. They were really his only friends. And he started spitting, shouting, screaming. It was like a live exorcism. His eyes started rolling around the back of his head. He was early 50s. And it took us all by surprise. When my dad was 48, he looked 38. When he was 52, he looked 72.
After that incident?
Yeah, it just aged him and broke him. And the police got called. They beat him up outside in the front lawn of the pub in front of all the customers. I was just stood there watching. My sister was bawling her eyes out. My mum was bawling her eyes out. We didn't know what was going on. 2 weeks later, I'd blagged a job in a property company through a guy I met a week before at a property networking event. A month later, I was selling properties for commission only, and I'd only been in property a month. 3 months later, I'd bought my first investment property with my business partner. And 12 months later, I'd got out of all my debt. I'd earned 100 grand pretty much bang on. And I owned 20 properties with this guy.
Wow.
And that was 2006. At the end of that 2006, we set up on our own because our boss was a bit militant. Fast forward to now, we've got 400 tenants, 350 odd property units. We've done over $250 million in sales for our training business. We'll probably do 23 to maybe a bit more million this year. This UK pounds, not dirhams. Because dirhams, I think, is times 6 or whatever. I've written 19.
In the good old days, it was.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the exchange rate, the pound is weak. So the pound versus everything is bad. I mean, how much is a Starbucks here? Oh my God, I have 3 quadruple Starbucks a day. So I had to sell about 15 properties to afford my...
So true. We'll put in the stats of what it is, actually, for those that are looking. Yeah.
Although, thankfully, I've been sat all day in taxis, and taxis are cheap. So that's all right. I've written 19 books on business and entrepreneurship. Got the UK's largest property training business. Disruptors, we have about 150 to 200 million views and downloads a year on our show. This is our 9th year, as I said, in podcasting. I've got about 3 million followers in the UK on my social media. And I think we have 11 different businesses or income streams. I'm 46 years old. I have 2 children who are 10 and 13. I've been married to my wife for nearly 20 years.
Love it.
So that's the
long and
radio
short of it.
edit.
I love it.
Yeah.
I want to just touch on that bit about dad. So was it then seeing dads go through that you're like, I have to do something else?
Yeah. I was a loser. I was. And, somebody say, oh, well, Rob, it was meant to be, and that's your journey. And if you didn't go through that, you wouldn't be where you are now. No, I was a loser. I had a chance to start a business at 16. My dad would have let me start a business at 14. My mum wouldn't, but my dad would have. I had chances to start my business at 18 and 21. And I just, if I'm going to be kind to myself, I would say that I was so full of fear. I was so full of down on myself, down on my luck. I thought everyone else was lucky and I wasn't. I never had the courage to do anything. I never approached a girl to ask her out until I was 27 years old.
So if someone's listening and they feel like unlucky and in maybe that position that you were in, what would you be saying to them right now?
Well, I mean, it's easier said than done.
Yeah.
And, I know if someone had said to me, oh, well, Rob, you just make your own luck. I'd have gone, walk a day in my shoes. And let's be honest, there's people in these war-stricken countries with their children just being blown to bits. So I would never be so flippant or disrespectful to say, well, you just make your own luck.
Just do it.
Well, if you have a roof over your head and you have an internet connection and you're not in a war zone and you've got a good sound body and mind, then you're fucking lucky. So count your blessings, know you're lucky, and go and take some risks. Go and start the business you wanted to start for 20 years. What's stopping you? What's the worst that's going to happen? Shoot your shot. I was on another podcast. There's a chap here, Radin, who does the podcast in the back of a Maybach and you just drive around. And he had a guy called Dan Bilzerian. He met him, he spent a day with him, and he didn't even ask him to be on his podcast. I was like, you should have shoot your shot. What's the worst that's going to happen? So I've only ever approached one woman in my whole life. And I'm now married to her. I've been married to her for 20 years. So the first time I actually went and approached a girl, when you used to have to go, like you used to have to put your drink on the bar, have a word with yourself, and just go and approach and just start talking to someone. And I was so scared that I would get rejected my whole life.
Yeah.
I even remember girls like years down the line would say, I used to like you. I was like, I used to like you too. And she was like, well, why didn't you come and talk to me? Because I was too scared, worried about what would happen. It was the same in business. It was the same in when I did some paintings. I was too scared to show it to people, to buy it. I was riddled with fear of failure and letting my dad down and shame. But I've since learned that successful people have those emotions too. They just do it anyway.
Yeah.
They just, you've probably heard the feel the fear and do it anyway.
Yeah.
So what would I say to someone? As long as you're not war-stricken and your body and your mind works, then what have you got to lose? If you don't risk anything, you risk everything. I say that at the end of all of my content. That's like my tagline. That's what I would say.
What's the riskiest thing you've done then, business?
We've got 100 apartment block, 160 tenants, big building. I mean, in Dubai, it's probably not a big building, but it's the biggest private rental block in our city. That was quite a big risk because we put a lot of our own money into that.
Yeah.
And then lockdown happened, and it was nip and tuck if we were going to be able to keep that building going. If they'd have shut the site down, that was costing us $45,000 a month, I think, to keep that site open. So back then, that was quite a big risk. The thing is, the things that people think are risky aren't. You might say starting your own business is risky, but it's really not. It's probably more risky to stay in a job for 30 years because tomorrow your boss could say, yeah, we're making you redundant. And it's not in your control, but at least when you run your own business, it's in your control. Yeah. And actually with property, we worked our way up. So we bought little houses for 60 grand. And now we've got 100 apartment blocks. Yeah. So I don't actually take massive risks.
Yeah.
I think massive risks are for movies about entrepreneurs, the Founders or Wolf of Wall Street. It's not often like that. It's often more progressive and incremental. And I think if people think, I've got to take massive risks, you don't. You don't have to remortgage your house and put all the money into your startup business. So if it doesn't work, your kids are on the street. You don't have to do that. You can go on crowdfunding websites and you could crowdfund the money. You can raise other people's money. And if you're worried about big amounts of money, have smaller amounts of money from different people, or you can start a coaching or a mentoring business and you can reinvest the money into grow your business. So risk is something you can do incrementally. You don't have to go all in like, all the Americans, go big or go home. You don't have to, especially if you're a mum with 3 kids and you're 39, and you've only got 10 hours a week. and maybe you're single and you've had a bit of a messy divorce, you're not going to want to put it all on the line because that's your kids. You don't have to. You can start a part-time yoga retreat. I know plenty of people who've done that, single mums. You drag your kids along with you. There's ways to do it without risking everything.
What made you get into the podcasting, personal development? So you're building up a property business. Then how did the next step come into, I guess, building the personal brand piece?
Personal development happened for me 10 years before podcasting.
Yep.
Because, all right, Joe Rogan might have had a podcast 18 years ago, but basically no one had a podcast then. I got in fairly early.
Yeah.
But personal development, I would say, maybe saved my life. I see the wanky, cheesy, scammy side of personal development now, which every industry has. But I would say it probably saved my life because I was down on myself, nearly ready to go bust, had given up. I wouldn't say I wasn't suicidal, but I was maybe the stage before. I hated myself. Did I hate myself? Yeah, I think I did. I think I had a lot of bitterness and envy and jealousy towards successful people, which if you put a mirror in, that was more self-loathing than it was loathing of others. Because all the things that they had, I actually wanted, but I was bitter that they had it and they must have been given it by mummy and daddy, or they must be a drug dealer, or they must be doing illegal business to be like that. When inside I actually wanted to be successful myself. My dad had taught me to be successful by being successful himself and teaching me age 8. So, when my flatmate, who was renting a room, I only had a really small house and I rented a really small room to him because I couldn't afford the mortgage. He was moving out and I was like, fuck, what am I going to do to pay the mortgage? He said, hey, look, I got a load of these CDs. You want them? And there's like Jack Johnson and there's these singer-songwriters that play the guitar. And I was like, well, I'm a bit of a depressed, broke artist. I'll listen to this. And he was Tony Robbins, and I thought it was I thought it was a singer-songwriter. I didn't know. He's just given me. I thought they don't have 7 albums in a box. And I put it on because I used to paint, so I just put music on and paint. And there's this big, loud, gregarious, ranty, shouty American. I'm like, what the fucking what is this? I'd gone through all the levels of skepticism and what is this, and no one can be this positive, and no one sounds this happy, and this is nonsense. And half an hour in, I was hooked.
Yeah. Tony was my first one as well, actually.
I've got a lot to be thankful for Tony Robbins. I've done some of his events, but I'm not really into till 2 a.m, high-fiving, hugging,
you wouldn't be dancing around?
I'm too British. No, you will not find me dancing anywhere. No way. So I did a lot of other courses which were a bit more practical and British, but I didn't even know what positive thinking was. I didn't know that you could control your own thoughts. I didn't know that you could change your mindset. I didn't know that your perception was your reality, not the reality. Therefore, I didn't know that you could change reality through your own perception. I didn't know all this stuff, and Tony Robbins, among other people, changed the game for me. And that was just before I went and worked for this property company. And so I was like, well, I've never sold before, but I know I can learn. I don't know how to sell property, but I know I can learn. I believe in myself and I can do this. I tried everything. I tried the incantations, the visualizations, the meditations, the self-talk, every day in every way. I'm more and more powerful. Yes. Down the fucking high street in Peterborough, because that's what he tells you to do. And
did it work?
Well, I've done all right since. I'm 46 now, and the UK is in a terrible state. And sometimes I think, I've got a bit grumpy. I still am British. I am still a bit skeptical, which I don't think there's a harm to be a bit skeptical. But it worked. Yeah. It worked. Yeah.
Let's touch on that authenticity piece, because I think, Tony shows up as Tony. Not that I've met him personally, but I kind of figure he's like that. You show up as who you are here. Before we started this, you said, I am who I am. Ask me anything. There's nothing holds. Was that something that you consciously went, I'm being me on everything, or did you get better at being you on these podcasts? There's a lot of people that are listening are going, oh, I would be too scared to say that. But over time it gets easier? What's your take on that?
Yeah, so authenticity and just being yourself, I think, is one of the hardest things to do. And everyone says it like, well, just be yourself. Just be authentic. Well, if it were that fucking easy, we'd all just be ourselves and be authentic.
Yeah.
So I want to give it a bit of airtime to say that it's a journey. Often we're trying to find who we are, and we think we've found it, and we try it on, and then maybe it doesn't fit. Or we find it, and then a family member dies, or your business goes under, and then you get lost again. I think authenticity and being yourself is a journey. And then, when you are truly authentic, you get trolls and haters and criticized for being it. And then you're like, fuck. And then you bring it back in again, and you hold it tightly, and you don't know if you dare do that again. I respect anyone who's trying to be authentic.
Yeah.
And then when you get into business and you listen to entrepreneurs, they're like, well, just copy successful people. Modeling. In the world of personal development and NLP, it's called modeling. You find successful people and you model their traits and their behaviors and their strategies to try and get their results. But then you're like, well, that doesn't really fit because I'm not really like that billionaire, or, I'm English, not American. And so you're spending all this time trying things on if they fit. I mean, I fucking hate buying jeans. I only wear Armani jeans because they're actually well priced for a good designer. I'm not I'm rich, but I'm not going to spend 500 quid on a pair of jeans. Yeah. I'll spend $5,000 on a jacket because you can see it. But I'm not going to spend 500. I'm not going to spend 500 quid on a pair of jeans.
You're speaking to a former celebrity stylist. Yeah.
But I hate buying jeans because I've got to try on like 20 pairs to find that, because I'm lanky. I've got skinny legs. Yeah. I'm not the standard size. And I think authenticity and yourself is like, you've got to try a lot of things on, and then you find you. But it can take you a long time. But I can help people because I'm pretty authentic. I've been stuck in a fucking taxi all day, and I'm like stressed. I'm not going to come in and go, hey, Kelly, hey. And I drunk that water and there's cucumber in it, and I'm saying to Sahiba, like, what the fuck is this? It's got cucumber in it. Like, I asked for sparkling water. Are you like challenging my sexuality here with putting cucumber in my water? And, I wear these tops, and I met Darius, who's well known out here. And he's like, do you want to take your backpack off? I'm like, no, this is just my style. And
McQueen, no?
Yes, it's McQueen. He didn't know it was McQueen.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, I've been wearing my McQueen jackets on all the other shows. I'm thinking, well, everyone's in shorts and T-shirts in Dubai. Should I be in short and T-shirt? No, I'm going to do me. So the best way to do you is, one, you've got to keep going to figure out who you are, and you've got to try things. And sometimes it won't fit, number one. Number two is, you're, the expert in personal branding, but, how do you want to be known? How do you want to be remembered? And try things that you admire in others, but know that you're probably your own unique version of that. Know that you're not perfect, because, by the way, I've tried on all these traits of people, and it's like, I can't live to them because I'm not perfect. But the big thing is, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail, and what would you do if no hater or troll could ever infiltrate how you feel? Yeah. Who would you be? What would you do? What would you say? What would you stand for? What would you stand against if you weren't worried about the consequences? That is where true authenticity lies. Love or hate Andrew Tate, and some of the things he's done, I don't agree with, and many of your female audience are gonna come up in hives just mentioning his name. But he has the courage to say what he says and stand behind it, and go to jail for it, and come out of jail and keep saying it. And, I know him, so I know what he's like off camera. So, do you have the courage to do that? Because I think that's what authenticity is.
Love that. What would you do if you knew you could not fail?
Yeah.
So when did you realize that you had a personal brand? Because I think, you're building up businesses, you're, buying property. Then when was the difference? Because I think when I speak to clients, they get confused. Oh, I've got a business. No, but that's not personal brand. Personal brand. When did you realize that there was two sides to that?
Probably when Facebook started to get usable for entrepreneurs. So I don't know if anyone's old enough, but back in the day when we started a Facebook account, it was to check out what our ex-girlfriends from school and our old friends are doing. And it was basically like Friends Reunited. And then it evolved, and you got Facebook groups and communities, and Facebook grew into this thing where you could essentially market yourself and people could find you and your business and your brand outside of a Google search. And because my first non-face-to-face networking marketing tool was Google. So I just was young enough to miss print, radio and TV ads. 25 years ago, there was no pay-per-click. There was no personal brand, unless you were Michael Jackson, because Michael Jackson was probably the original personal brand, but you had to be a mega celeb.
Yeah, superstar.
And now anyone can have a personal brand, which has an upside. So I remember doing this big PR campaign for one of my books, paying $5,000 a month to this PR company. Just in the old days of radio, I just sat and did loads of radio shows, and many of them were local, and we got hardly any views to our website. Yeah. And we were sold the big dream of how it would change our world, and it didn't. And to get on TV and in print would cost 5, 10, 20, 50, 100 grand, and there's no guarantee. And then Google came in, and you could pay 10 pence a click, £2 a lead or a customer. And it really disrupted. And just after Google, Facebook was an organic way to do it, where you could put information, content as we now call it, online, and people would follow you. So probably 15 years ago, I remember we built up a property Facebook group. We still have it. We've got about just under 50,000 members. But back when it had 8,000 members, Progressive Property Community, it was wildly engaged. Probably like 7.5 of the 8,000 of them were wild, all discussing, debating, arguing. We'd sell hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of courses a year just out of that Facebook group. I mean, that was before Instagram, it was before WhatsApp, before TikTok. YouTube, it was kind of before YouTube was where you'd have your personal brand. Obviously, way before podcasting. Yeah. So that's probably when it started for me. And
then I noticed like one of your popular videos that you were talking about was the monetization aspect of the personal brand. And you took, I think it was basketball player. There was a couple of celebrities that you'd said they monetize, but where do you think they monetize their brand from? It's not just the sport they're playing, it's everything else. And it was a really popular reel. Do you remember which one I mean in?
I've probably posted 20,000 videos, I would have thought.
It was one of the last six.
Yeah, and often what we do is we take content from longer form and chop it. So I'm just, you want the authentic Rob. I have no idea what video you're referring to. Yeah.
But I think it was the whole aspect of you actually also highlighting the monetization aspect of a personal brand. Regardless of what industry that you're in, there's other ways to monetize your brand, which I think is what you're doing and what you encourage other people to do as well.
Yeah, well, what you might be referring to is if you think about brands that are actually personal brands that were the original, the OGs, and you learn from them, you realize how powerful a personal brand is. So most people have probably heard of Nike.
Yeah.
Most people have probably heard of Nike Airs, and most people have probably heard of Nike Air Jordans. But I bet you, especially a lot of the young guys, girls, non-binaries, they won't know who Michael Jordan is. They know Nike Air Jordan. But Michael Jordan was a sports star, and he did a deal with Nike, and he made more out of the deal with Nike than he ever did out of basketball. Just like Tiger Woods made more out of branding than he ever did out of golf. Nike Air Jordan was a collab between the personal brand of Michael Jordan and Nike. And now you don't need to be Michael Jordan to do that. You can be Rob Moore. You can be Kelly. You can have cucumber water. you can do pranks. You can do whatever you want. So if you sell a business, it's gone, but your personal brand will always stay with you. Mm-hmm. Or if you want to sell your name, you can. Tom Ford sold his name for in the billions. I own 350 property rentals, but I'd probably give all of those up to retain my personal brand.
What's the side of the revenue, but which side of the personal branding piece that you love outside the property? Is it the speaking? Is it the podcasting? What are the other things that you do? What do you love the most?
So I lay awake at night a lot, beating myself up about what I could do better. It's just a trait of mine. It's helped me do quite well in business, but it loses me a lot of sleep. And maybe I've done too much. So I've got Disruptors Podcast, 9 years in. I also have another podcast called Money. Yep. I've written 19 books, money, business, entrepreneurship. I do quite a lot of speaking, a well-paid speaker. I run various training companies. I put content on all social media channels. And I sometimes wonder if I'd have just been a YouTuber like Mr. Beast, or if I'd just been a podcaster like Joe Rogan, or if I'd just been a speaker like Tony Robbins, because did just that thing and then mastered that thing and then got big enough and then just repurpose everything everywhere else, and because it just blows up. So Mr. Beast isn't a TikToker, but if he puts a video on TikTok, it blows up. Yeah. Because of how big he is on YouTube. Whereas I've tried to do them all. But then I was good at all the subjects at school, but not great. I was good at all the sports at school, but not great. Yeah. So maybe that's just who I am, and maybe I shouldn't beat myself up about that. So today I might love podcasting the most. Yeah. Tomorrow I might love public speaking the most. The day after I might love writing the most. The day after that I might love being an entrepreneur and a powerful CEO the most. I know I have a high need for variety. I mean, one of the 6 human needs is variety. But one of them is also safety and security, and that's a paradox. But I know I need variety. Yeah. My business partner's like, why don't you just do the thing that makes the most money and keep doing it for 100 years? He loves Warren Buffett, compounding over. That would kill me. Yeah. But I also know I've probably distracted myself a bit too many times. Well, look, I'm not a billionaire, but I'm doing good. Mm-hmm. But then my nature, my personality is always going to be looking at what I should have done, not what I did. I did 3 podcasts while I'm here. And I say this with humility. I'm a good interviewer. And I get a lot of recognition from people who've been interviewed hundreds of times. And they say, you're good. I've done nearly 1,300 episodes. I'd be an idiot if I wasn't. And interviewing is not easy. As you know it's not easy. When to speak, when to look at your cue cards, when to interrupt and go there, and when not, how long to let them speak, and how to maintain rapport, and when not. And, you got to check everything's working, and when are we getting kicked out? So I did a podcast interview this morning, and I fucked up my first question. I never fuck up my first question. And then I fucked up, i.e. I just, rather than saying the question, and I beat myself up all day about that. Even though he really loved the podcast and he gave me a free Lamborghini. Shout out to Ahmed Amwell of Luxury Supercars, because he was very generous. I should have just not said for a day. He gave me a Lamborghini. Yeah, I'd have been like, I'm going on his podcast. Yeah, but yeah, I'm quite hard on myself. And people tell me not to be, but that's what I am. So to answer your question, which I didn't really do at all, it depends what day it is. And I do them all. And I probably shouldn't, and I do. And I'll probably never be a Mr. Beast of anything. But I'm doing pretty well, and I'm pretty well known. Consider I'm running fucking load of businesses. Like a lot of people, when I interview them, they're like, oh, Jesus, I didn't know you had 350 odd properties. I didn't know you were an author of 19 books.
That surprised me, 19 books.
Yeah, because I'm not just a podcaster. If anyone calls me a podcaster, I'm not just a podcaster. If they call me a millionaire, well, I'm not just a millionaire. I made a lot more than just one.
I wanted to explore a little bit more, because I know you touched on that you were out here with speaking. And I feel that speaking is one of the biggest, not motivators, but it kind of propels you so much more in your personal brand from a visibility perspective, expertise. Yeah. How did you get into it?
When I did my personal development with Tony Robbins, I also found a guy called Chris Howard, and he ran a load of courses, and I went and bought them all on a credit card, which, hallelujah, thank goodness I did. And one of them was called Presentation and Platform Skills. And coincidentally, at the time, my boss came to me and said, we've got this opportunity to speak in front of 300 people. And there was me, my boss, and my business partner, now the three of us. This was 19 years ago. And he said, we need a speaker. And they both looked at me. And I was like, I'll do it. And I didn't know I'd never done a public speech. I think they just both looked at me because they were both petrified themselves. So I was like, okay, right. Well, yeah, I'm going to go on the speaking course then. And then I went to do the logistics and I found out it was in Australia. The next one was in Australia. You could wait a year to do the one in the UK, but I didn't want to wait a year.
Yeah.
So I went back to my boss and said, it's in Australia. So if I cover the flights, will you cover all the accommodation and everything else? And he said, yeah, go on then. So we partnered up on it because I still didn't have much money then. And I flew out to Australia and did this public speaking course. Loved it and hated it at the same time because it was shit scary. Came back and did my first speech and I thought I did all right. And yeah, I got paid £32,000 to do my last speech.
Wow. Love it.
So that's not a bad return.
No.
I mean, the course was $3,000 and then I got paid £32,000 for one speech.
And how long was that?
I did a day.
Okay.
So my fee would be a bit less for an hour.
Yeah.
It was a day. But actually, I like a day because you get, as you've noticed with some of my questions, I will take a tangent or two to give context. And I like to go deep on the answers, not just give you one word answers.
Yeah.
So I actually prefer doing longer talks than shorter talks. If anyone wants me for less than 45 minutes, I probably won't do it.
So how did you get your first paid one then?
A recommendation, actually. I can't remember. It was some real corporate machine. They were looking for a motivational speaker. And they were paying £3,000.
Was that your first paid
Yeah,
one?
well,
Was
£3,000 back then.
That's good.
19 years ago.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and I'd never done a motivational speech, but I'd listened to Tony Robbins, so I couldn't do it. Yeah, and I went in there and I rah-rahed the shit out of them. And I was probably a bit tone deaf. I didn't, I tried to know the audience and know the niche. I was actually, I mean, if I watched it, I'd probably hate myself, but I was all right. I think I whooped them up a bit. But yeah, $3,000 for my first paid gig.
One. That's brilliant. And how many do you do a month now?
I pick and choose because of time.
Yeah.
A busy month, I'll do 10. Quiet month, I'll do 3, 4.
What would you say to someone who's wanting to get out and maybe do more speaking? What kind of
Yeah, well, in my first year of speaking, I would speak anywhere.
Yeah.
A great way to start is to go to local networking events. Yeah. You might not get lucky and land a $3,000, which in today's money might be $5,000 or $6,000. You might not land that. But I used to go to quite a lot of local business and speaking events.
Yeah.
You can go to Toastmasters. I'd go to property networking events, business networking events. And, there'd be 30 or 40 people there.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're harder than the bigger stages. I've done 5,000 because you can't see the people. There's just lights. I'd get yourself out. If you're a rock band, you're going to go and play some small pubs, aren't you? And that's kind of like, you'll remember that years gone by and you're earning your right and you're practicing your craft. Quite a lot of comedians, they'll just, I'm just going to do this local gig. 50 of you can come and watch, and they test their material there. You don't want to bomb in front of 5,000. You want to bomb in front of 30. Yeah. You can do speaking courses. You should. Our mutual friend Andy Harrington does. Go and learn with him. We do speaking courses. You should learn, but you have to go out and do. And so, yeah, I did a lot of local. I drove around the country for 20, 30, 40 people doing local speaking gigs and sort of earned my right there.
Yeah. There was another reel which I'm going to bring in because I think it's kind of an entrepreneurship aspect of...
I just need some coconut. Yeah. Cucumber.
It was one of your most watched reels about putting your prices up and attracting high quality clients. A lot of people get scared to put their prices up, and you had said you'll attract a different type of client. And I see it a lot with clients that come to me and they're charging too little. I'd love for you to give your perspective on that.
Oh, wow. You're going to need to rebook this studio for...
Can we just do a whole hour on this?
Because it's actually really important. In my book, Life Leverage, I wrote about the story of Picasso that many don't know. Many artists are broke in their life and they only get rich when they're dead, which I don't want to be rich when I'm dead. I want to be rich when I'm alive. But Picasso actually did make good money as an artist when he was alive. And he was obviously very famous in France. And the myth has it that he was in a cafe and a lady noticed him and approached him and said, could you draw something on this napkin? Could you draw something for me? And so he kind of did a squiggle, and then there was the awkward pregnant pause. She looked at him and she said, okay, how much? And he said, 5,000 francs. She said, 5,000 francs, that just took you 1 minute. He said, no, that took me my whole life. And when people undersell themselves, they're underselling themselves, and they don't realize they've got pain, hardship, struggle. They've got transmutable experience in their corporate job, their old world that they can bring into their new world, their uniqueness, their grit, their resilience. All they're looking at is, I've never done property before, and now I'm trying to get into property, and I'm no good, I'm not worthy. So when you remember who you are, that needs to go into your pricing. Now, that's the emotional element. You've had my friend Daniel Priestley on the show, I think.
Did, yes.
Yeah, so he's a dear friend of mine, go back 15 odd years. He'll talk to you about the supply and demand element. So a great way to price yourself is if you know you have more demand than supply, you can increase your price because you don't fear the loss of not being sold out.
So true.
Yeah. And so what I do to put up my prices is I don't look at inflation. I don't even look at what I think I'm worth. You could do that. Obviously, the more experience you've got, I just go, as soon as I've got more demand than supply, I put my price up because there's no risk, because I'm not going to lose any business because I'm full. So that's where the personal brand comes in. Because if you put content out there every day and you've got 5,000 followers and you want to sell 10 people on your mastermind at $3,000, you're easily going to sell 10 out of 5,000. So you sell the 10 at $3,000, you're full. So then you put it up to $5,000 for the next one, and you have 12, and you work the numbers, and you know you're going to sell out. Now here's the paradox: as soon as you put the price up, you attract more people who want to buy it, because you give off an aura that you value yourself. So as I've charged more for my speaking fee, I've got more speaking gigs. When you think you get less. When people approach me and want to hire me and they want to get me for free, no, that's my fee. It puts a few off, but a lot of people go, oh. And I think people are scared that they won't make any money, or that people will think they're too expensive. Let's go there. Like, if someone's scared that they think that other people will think or say that they're too expensive, so would you want to be seen as cheap?
Yeah.
I mean, if I had the choice between being seen as too cheap or too expensive, I'll take too expensive.
Absolutely.
Why not? And the great thing as well about being more expensive is you attract the people who have more money. So people think, okay, if I put my price up or my price is expensive, I will lose customers. No. You gain higher paying ones. You only lose lower paying ones. So I write about this a lot in my book Money and book Money Matrix. I'm writing about 5 books at the moment, and one of them is called Increase Your Fees with Ease.
Ooh.
Working title. Yeah. Don't nick it. But yeah, pricing is not something many people go deep in. Your net worth is your self-worth. But there's the self-worth element, and then there's the supply, demand, and the sort of mechanics of it.
Now the speaking one's quite interesting, a bit like the Picasso one, but you're only speaking for an hour, which I get a lot. Well, yeah, but still, my experience, my time, it's quite an interesting one, actually, how people perceive it.
As well, you've got to get there and get back. So let's say you're doing an overseas gig, you've got to travel, jet lag, do the talk, travel back, jet lag. That could be 3 days for that 1 hour. So yes, there's your whole life for the 1 hour, but there's also the travel there. But then there's the opportunity cost. So a day out of my business costs my company at least 15 to 20 grand.
Yeah. At
least. You know, we'll do 23, 25 million this year. We did almost 20 last year, and it was a low year for us just because of lockdown, COVID, Labour, UK. So you can see what I'm worth to the business. So there's the opportunity cost of taking me out. This is a reason why people shouldn't be doing talks for 200 quid. I told you my speaker fee, but I could do more for less. It's going to cost me a lot to do a lot more for less. I'd rather do a speaking gig for free than cheap.
Yeah.
Because at least if I do it for free, I'm probably going to get something in return.
Yeah.
They're probably going to let me pitch.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done sales pitches for hundreds of thousands of pounds. So I told you I got paid a fee of 32 grand. But I made 500 grand selling. So sometimes it's better to speak for free.
Yeah, that I have learned as well, but you've got to pick. But I think in sort of certain organizations where you're never going to pitch, or they're maybe not necessarily a clientele, then yeah, it's an interesting space. On the travel piece, Dubai, travel, you're here. What do you love about it, or what don't you like about it? Why do you keep coming back?
Right. So what I love about Dubai is that currently it is freezing and blizzards in the UK, and here it's t-shirt weather. That's obviously great. I think the biggest thing I love about Dubai is opportunity. And everyone I've interviewed or has interviewed me on this, 2-week tour has said the UK is ruined and Dubai is full of opportunity. And, the people that run the state nation of Dubai, they want you to succeed. And it seems like Labour want anyone who's in business and entrepreneurship to fail. And, I understand Supercar Blondie Alex, she told me that there's this creator initiative where in Dubai, they will give you a golden visa. They'll help you set up a studio, and they'll basically support and subsidize or part subsidize and help you to lure in creators. I mean, I just think that, I was going to say, I think that's genius. It's not genius, it's common sense if you want to grow an economy. And in the UK, they're doing the opposite. Yeah. There's more and more and more and more and more and more tax. The more you earn, the more you pay. So, when I give commissions to my staff, the more they earn, the more they get, because I want them to earn more.
Yeah, of course.
But in the UK, the more you earn, the more you're taxed and the less you get. It's outrageous. My daughter, who's 10, it took my wife probably a year of hard work to find the perfect school for her. Now, some people are going to say, cry me a river, I send my kids to private school. They're entitled to their opinion. But my daughter's school 2 days ago just told everyone the school is closing.
Oh, wow.
200 kids. It's the most inclusive, holistic school. There's a really good high academic school near us, and best in the county. It wasn't right for my daughter. And they're shutting because of Labour putting the VAT and the national insurance taxes on schools and staff. Yeah. And that's disgusting. Yeah. It's disgusting that you tax education. And it's disgusting that a school, which there's 200 really happy kids, has had to shut because they did their numbers. They got bought out. They're at 180 pupils. They know they can break even at 200. Now they're breaking even at 225. They can't do it. They're shutting the school.
Wow. So would you move?
Yeah, I probably would move, but my dad's still going. He's a stubborn old goat. He's 80 odd. I'm not leaving my dad. It'd be so selfish of me to move here. Yeah. And I don't want a call to hear that my dad died when I'm in Dubai and he's in the UK. I don't want that call. I want to be there. My mum as well, she's there. My family is there. My kids are in school there. So I can't leave now. Yeah. But I can come here more. What everyone's telling me, I will shout from the rooftops about what I think is great about Dubai. And I will keep criticising what's wrong about the UK. And that's what being authentic is, back to your question before. And it's hard because I will build a lot of enemies in the UK, who are socialist or left or are on getting loads of handouts from the government. And, I'm sure Labour know who I am now, and I'm sure I'm not their most a popular person, but they're ruining the country. The NHS is broken. You can't get in. The healthcare here is amazing. In Dubai, I believe it's now 5% VAT, but there was none for ages. In the UK, it's 20%. In Dubai, I believe it's 7% corporation tax. Forgive me if I get the numbers wrong, but it's what I'm being told. And I believe there was...
that was only recent.
Yeah,
as well.
Only recently. Yeah. In the UK, it's 25%.
Yeah.
I believe in Dubai, there's no income tax. In the UK, it's 39%. I believe in Dubai, there is no national insurance, which is a tax. In the UK, it's 15%. Say no more. shake. Can I have a visa? I'm in. I love
Give me a
you.
golden
But
visa.
like, one of my friends here, there was an opportunity he didn't take. And he said, well, Rob, you know, in life you have to be realistic. And it was funny because exactly at that moment we were driving and you could see the Burj Khalifa. And I pointed it and I went, is that realistic?
Yeah.
Is the tallest building in the world realistic? This place 35 years ago was sand, or however long.
Yeah, maybe not even that much. Yeah.
And now look at it.
Yeah.
And that's opportunity.
Yeah.
And I want to go where there's opportunity. And I want to shout from the rooftops about people who are doing great things when they give opportunity. And unfortunately, the UK, they're not, it's the opposite. And that's why all the 20,000 millionaires since lockdown have left the UK.
Is it as many as that?
It's 20,000 millionaires. And, you know, if the average millionaire makes 70 million, the UK have just pushed out. And Dubai and Lisbon and other countries are the beneficiary of that. And good on them.
Yeah.
And UK used to be like that. London used to be where everyone came.
Yeah.
You know, it's a tax haven. It's opportunity. London was probably the original multicultural nation where you could be an immigrant and you could go to London and you could start a life. And what is it now? It's just like crime and racism and hate. And I hate it. It's sad, but it needs to be said. And some people, oh, Rob, you're just so negative. Oh, you know, I want positivity. No, you have to face
Or realness.
what is going on and then go where there's opportunity. You know, I started my business 19 years ago and I'm so grateful to the UK because there was opportunity to start my business. There was so tax breaks. There was support from the government 19 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, Tony Blair was, you know, quite right for a lefty, but not anymore.
Yeah.
And it's sad. But
Watch
there we
this
go.
space then.
Yeah,
Dubai.
maybe I'll come to Dubai one day. I mean, how long have you been here?
22 years.
Oh, wow. Why
Yeah.
did you leave? Where were you? Were you?
Edinburgh.
Okay, fine.
Weather.
Yeah. So you literally left for weather.
Scotland.
Yeah.
Opportunity. I mean,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong.
Did you come with family?
No, on my own.
You just
Emirates.
came on your own?
Yeah. But it was a great, as you say, opportunity. So I laugh when I say the weather because as much as Edinburgh and Scotland is beautiful, I wanted to do something else, an opportunity. And I was only 2 years. I came as cabin crew. And I was
Wow.
only 2 years when you say exactly that, opportunity. And I started my own business and I've been in my own business
So
for 20
basically,
years.
for 20 years, you've hardly paid any tax on what you've earned. I don't like you anymore.
Oh, no,
I don't
it's
like
a
you
wrap.
anymore. All right, well, thank you for having me on your show. I hope you
Thanks
got what
for
you wanted.
coming. No, but I just love. Yes, I did. But thank you so much. I really enjoyed your energy and just your authenticity. And
Thank you.
God, there's another hour. Like I've got tons
yeah.
of questions I could have asked
Yeah,
you.
that's
but
the intro.
back for part 2.
All right, yeah, I've got a few offers to come back. I'll be back.
Thank you so much.